Can you tell me a bit about yourself and where you grew up?
Uh, I'm Sandra Head, and I am a mother of five girls, and I have 19 grandkids, and I have 16 great grandkids, chattans, and I lived on the reserve for the first 5 years of my life, and then after that, I went to residential school for 7 years. And after that, I moved back to the reserve when I was, 12 and 13. And I kept moving around when I was young because of my parents. But I lived with my aunts and uncles for most of my life. And that'll become part of my story is with my mom, my dad. So, and right now I am enjoying my life because I am an elder now and I get to see what life brings to me right now. So
Okay. Um, would you like to share a little bit about your family and your community?
my family and my community, I most of my family uh, are deceased, and I have one brother. I I had like in my younger years, like I said, I had there was five of us, six of us in my whole family. However, I had an older brother. He passed away when he was a child before I was born, and then I had twin sisters that uh, didn't survive either. So there was only me, my older sister, and my brother. And right now, I only have one brother alive. My sister passed away 15 years ago, so there's just me and my brother out of my family.
Yeah. Okay. Um, if you're comfortable sharing, what was the name of the school you attended?
Gordon's Residential School and All Saints Residential School here in Prince Albert.
How come two of them?
Because I went to Gordon's in 1965 to 69. Then I got transferred to All Saints in Prince Albert due to being closer to my father, who was in the penitentiary. That's why we transferred.
Um, how old were you when you were sent to residential schools for the?
In 1965, we got sent to the residential schools, me and my sister first. Uh, I don't know how we got picked up. That's the part I can't remember, but my sister told us that we left in a bus or a van with, I don't know who they were, people,
Um,
Indian agent, I think they used to call them.
probably. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. Do you remember how your family reacted to you being taken away?
Well, it was my aunt and uncle, like I said, because my mom passed away in 65 and my dad was in the penitentiary. So I don't know how we ended up in the residence because we had no home and we were just living with our aunts on both sides of my mom and dad. And I do believe someone had said that we were homeless, so that's why, and not, we had didn't have our parents with us, so that's why we got apprehended. and ended up in Gordon's.
Do you know who ran the school? Was it a church, the government, or both?
Uh, it was an Anglican residential, as far as I know, but we did go to church there
Yeah.
in the residence.
And then what about the second school?
The second school, we had a school right on the residential grounds. That's where we would go to school.
What was a typical day like at the school?
Typical day was get up, have breakfast, go to clean up, then go to school. And then our free time was after supper. We'd be outside. It was like that for 4 years. Same old thing every day.
Were you allowed to speak your language or practice your culture? And did you lose these things as a result of residential schools?
Yes, as far as I know, my sister was telling us we spoke Cree before we left the residential school. And when we got there, right away we got our hair cut. And I was a very quiet girl growing up. I stuck to myself, and I did see other students getting hit for speaking their language. We weren't allowed to continue our culture or traditions, what we knew from back home. So, yeah, there's a lot of parts in my life from the residential school that I cannot remember.
In recent years, we have heard terms being floated around residential schools like cultural genocide. Would you say the residential schools, or would you call the residential schools an act of cultural genocide? Why or why not?
I would say there was because mostly because I would hear like the boys and girls were separated. I would hear a lot of crying and yelling from the boys' school on the boys' side. So I didn't know what was going on there at the moment. I often wondered until I got older and found out. But it was totally different in Prince Albert Residential School. Seen lots, and PA was the one place where I was sexually abused, so that was it was totally different from Gordon's. But I did see I did see lots in Gordon's, like they were very strict in Gordon's. Like I said, we used to get hit for things, even though we didn't eat our porridge, which was always lumpy, and I used to gag on the food because it was not, it was not just like cooked right, and we had to eat it or we'll get hit. So a lot of times I got hit from the supervisors for not eating my food up. So, yeah. What else was the question?
Why? It's not one I had. But why do you say the Prince Albert one is worse than the Gordon's one?
Because a lot of it from Gordon's is blocked, but in Prince Albert, I remembered what was going on because I was getting older. But in Gordon's, it's blocked, a lot of it, and I was told I can get hypnotized and see how come. But I do remember in Gordon's, I used to sleepwalk, and so, anyways, this one night I was sleepwalking, and there was a night watchman. He had a kind of a big belly. And I was sleepwalking. I bumped into him, and I landed on my bum. And last, I woke up, and I was sitting on the floor. And last thing I remember him was grabbing my hand. And after that, I do not remember anything that happened after that. I don't know, and I don't want to know what happened to me at that time. So I left it be for all these years. So to this day, I still don't want to know, because of where I'm at in my life. I wanted to rest.
Um, what has helped you heal or begin to heal from that, like the entire experience of residential schools?
Uh, uh, what has helped me was I started talking about my experiences in the residential school in late 90s, and I started talking to other people. We started talking because we were getting older now, and why we we were the way we were, and we learned to share with our secrets from residential school. And then I started on my healing journey after that, when I knew I wasn't alone on what happened to us in the residential schools.
Um, what do you want younger generations to understand about what happened in residential schools?
Uh, Say that again.
What do you want younger generations to understand about what happened in residential schools?
Well, what I teach my children, grandchildren, that I share my stories with them on what happened, and I just don't want them to live what I went through. However, things happen for a reason, and back then we had no choice but to go. And today I would tell my kids to love one another and to speak up, because we weren't allowed to speak up, in the residential, and to be more understanding about the schools we went to, and not of I don't know, I just went blank again. To understand about residential schools, if they want to know, I would let them tell them and learn from it. Like I had to learn the hard way, like in my lifetime, on like being clean, going to school, like have an education. I pushed for that, but when I first got married, I was a very passive person because I was scared to talk because of the way we were treated in residential school. I ended up marrying a person that went to residential school too, so it was a challenge for both of us. So teachings, I like that. I I don't know how to answer that right now when this blank.
Yeah.
Chaos.
Okay. Thinking about treaties for a moment and how in the Treaty 6, the government agreed to help educate Indigenous people. Would was residential schools a breach of Treaty 6 promises of education? Why or why not?
Well, I would say like yeah, they both broke treaty, but however, from my perspective, um, I was taught a lot of things in residential school through the schools. I I learned to read, write, which I did not do before I got there, and I had to learn the language, and I learned a lot of things there, the positive way. There was still a lot of negative on the personal other things in our lives, but I after coming out of the residence, I I do believe that why ask people and myself why did they force us to go there without our consent? But we were children, and that's I like for me it gave me hope, like for the education part of it. But why that way, like in residential school? I don't know. For me, it's different because I learned lots from it. But
Yes.
until I got older and understood it more, it made like, why?
Yeah. Um. So, is there anything else that you'd like to share that hasn't been asked yet about residential schools and that you think is important for people to know?
Uh, well, there was some parts of my life are dark in the residential, and most of it was not. Uh, I when I was in PA residential school, I didn't understand why we were being moved there, and that's that was one of the hardest uh, things in my life, where I had to learn to accept like the abuse carried on from one residential school to the other, and uh, for me, it was. I thought I was alone in the abuse, like the sexual abuse. I thought I was alone. I didn't say nothing till I got older and learned to talk about it and to share my stories. And that's when I knew I wasn't alone. And I didn't know how to. Uh, I coming out of the residence after knowing this and that education, everything like that. Going home back home now, it was different because I had no mom, and I knew my mom had passed. And I didn't know my dad till 1971. Like, and I was a first, like, I didn't know I still had a dad. Learning to accept that, moving on in my life, and with the experiences of the residential schools, it was a learning experience for me because like I said, I was a passive person, and I didn't know how to speak up for myself at times. And as I grew older, I became more assertive in my life, and and I learned many things in the residence. Now today I am learning my language, my Cree language, and I get to speak up when I can. No, but not. I I'm still on a healing journey with other things in my life. Like all my everything in my life.
Um, when when would you say you started healing from residential schools?
I started healing in, I'd say, about 4 years ago. I started with uh, some older friends of mine. We used to have healing circles. That's where it all started. It was over 40 years ago, and I kept going and going. Still to this day, I still go to meetings, talking to people, elders that are teaching me. However, I still have addictions. I smoke and I do drink occasionally, like those are addictions. And I often ask myself, why do I have these addictions when I have everything already? Like I can have everything. I don't need anything else. So all my time goes to my family. And yeah, that's where I got my teachings from too, is the people that I healed with, and I'm still healing with them, and they help me to this day.
Um, just to summarize up here, is there one experience from residential schools that you think would like summarize the entirety of your experience in residential schools?
Same.
Is there like one experience that would like give a general idea of your entire experience at residential schools that you are willing to share?
Oh, okay. The experiences. Well, like I said, uh, the only experience I would, like I said, I'm openly about my sexual abuse because, uh, like I said, I thought I was alone at the time, but when I did do, the compensation part of it, that's when I learned to speak up about my sexual abuse because it was from another girl. So I that was one of the hardest things I have to talk about in my life. That sexual abuse from another girl, and it took me years to talk about it. And every time I would talk about it, I would cry, I would get angry because I said, "Why me? You know, why did you do that to me?" Like that. And I had to learn to live with that. I was ashamed, I felt dirty. And, learning to talk about that sexual abuse really helped me get stronger on my healing journey. But, that part of my life, because it did affect me as I got older. Like I said, it, mhm. um, like I said, I was married to a residential survivor. So more of that sexual abuse came in hand again, and I didn't know how to stop it. So that really affected my life, as you can see. It's still. That's what hurted me the most in the residence was that sexual abuse. Then I had to live like that for 30, over 30 years with my husband. And I didn't understand why. And I had to learn to live with my husband because I didn't know that happened to him in the residence. Why we had that, you know. That was the most hurtful thing in my life in the residence because it continued for a year. And hurt, it hurt me. And today, still today, it hurts because I have to live with that. And yet, I can talk about it, but not get into internal of it. But yeah, it happened to me for about a year after I got moved to a different cottage, and back then nobody believed you. Because I told my best friend, and she just didn't believe me. So I just left it alone for years, decades actually. But yeah, that was my life, and my husband passed away, and you know, I got to understand where he was coming from after we did our claims, and that's when I found out that he was sexually abused for many years, and we would talk about it, but it hurt him too, and that's when we separated after that residential claim stuff. Yeah. But yeah, that was one of the one of the things that stays in my mind from residential school. That's the one thing that hurt me the most in my lifetime.
For people who are still hurting, what would you tell them is the best way to heal? Like, what's something that they could do that would help them start their healing journeys as well?
I would say like talk to somebody like um, these counselors or elders. I went to elders. I would suggest an elder, and at times when you don't know what to do, go somewhere alone, out in the open, and just scream and yell and cry and vent out. That's what I practiced doing by myself too. At the river, I would yell and let it all out. And crying really helps. But I always went to an elder on when something was bothering me or that was a part of healing, like crying the tears. And what I do, I smudge to take away the negative, you know. So that helps too. And sobriety is good. Other than that, on my healing journey, that's how I went. I talked to elders and I talked to a lot of people. I even went to AA meetings and other kind of meetings, like just getting to know other people and understanding where they're coming from. And that's when I knew I wasn't alone. And nobody's alone in any kind of situation today. Like, you know, get that help, reach out. I That's how I dealt with mine.